when you try to write good fiction, you need to be informed by reality so that you can give texture to the book, to the characters, to the plot. So, of course, it's informed by the few years I spent at the World Economic Forum, but it's not the World Economic Forum.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, we've got a really interesting guest for you today. Probably one of the most interesting I've ever had on the show before, Dr. Thierry Malleret, co-author with World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab of two books, The Great Reset and The Great Narrative. And he's also a novelist, and the latest book that he's come out with is entitled Deaths at Davos. And Dr. Thierry, Dr. Malleret, it's great to have you on the show. So
thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. So the book, Deaths in Davos, tell us about what inspired you to write it.
It's entitled Deaths at Davos. It's a fictional place, of course. It's a work of fiction. It's a novel. It's a geopolitical and financial thriller. And what prompted me to write it, I like to write thrillers, first of all, because when you write a novel, a thriller, you are just bound by one thing, which is the power of your own imagination. You can go anywhere you like. And I want to address in the book two issues which I think are absolutely vital for the markets. One is geopolitical risk, and the other is ESG and everything that pertains to the environmental transition and green investing. So I thought, well, Davos could be an interesting place where to address these two issues because so much happens when you're there.
Interesting. So it's kind of centered around a character who, a young high-flying Ukrainian. She's come to Davos to promote her Reconstruct Ukraine fund, and that's when the fun begins, huh?
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly. Is that based on somebody you knew or a totally fictional character?
It's totally fictional, but when you try to write good fiction, you need to be informed by reality so that you can give texture to the book, to the characters, to the plot. So, of course, it's informed by the few years I spent at the World Economic Forum. But It's not the World Economic Forum. I must emphasize that. Again, it's a work of fiction.
Right. So Mark Twain once commented that truth is stranger than fiction. Fiction is limited by the imagination, but truth isn't.
Absolutely. That's a very good quote.
Right. So if your prior works like The Great Reset, a lot of people, myself included, have the impression that there's an agenda at play to reduce the global population to a more manageable level. Is that a misconception, or?
It is. No, there is nothing as sinister as that in the book. The book is very simple, if I may say that. The idea when we wrote the book, Klaus Schwab and myself, was to shed light on what the pandemic would entail in macro terms, on the economy, on societies, on geopolitics, on tech, on the environment. And we just wanted to get a sense, trying to imagine what the after effect of the pandemic would be. But no, absolutely no regarding depopulation, all these kind of things, which are sinister.
Conspiracy theories, Klaus Schwab has gotten a bad rap. The quote that's attributed to him is, you will, in the future, you'll own absolutely nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, nothing to do with Professor Schwab. This quote has been tracked and identified. It's the World Economic Forum is a big place to meet all sorts of people, And I can't remember the name of the person who said that, but it was not in Davos. First of all, it was one of the many gatherings that the World Economic Forum organizes. And I think she's an academic, a young academic. So it was taken out of context entirely. And neither Schwab nor myself ever said that.
Okay, good. And nobody,
Right.
you never said that we're all a bunch of useless eaters.
How could I possibly say that?
But the I mean, some of it's crazy, like pushing, a lot of stuff gets attributed to the World Economic Forum that has no relation. And a good friend of mine, his wife was high up. She organized it like every year. So I have a little bit of insight into it. But it's like so shadowy to most people who think that really like all these plots are being hatched against the United States in particular and humanity, and that it's really us against them, if you will. What is the main purpose, though, if you had to sum it up in one sentence, of the W.E.F?
Well, I'm not sure it's for me to respond to that question because I'm not a member of the staff anymore.
Sure, I understand.
For me, is to make money. It's a very successful place that gathers global CEOs, decision makers, academics, media leaders, activists, and they do so very successfully. So I don't think there is anything sinister. It's very simple. And to the point about conspiracies and shadowy agendas, etc., we live in a place in which everything is now fully transparent. You can't do anything confidential anymore, but keep it in such a place. Everybody travels there with a phone, with a mobile, where you can register anything that you hear in Davos. I think it's entirely apparent. Therefore, I'm very skeptical about this ideas. Important decisions are made in Davos. No, maybe important decisions are made by the CEOs who go to Davos to do business, because that's the fundamental justification for going to Davos. When you're a global CEO, you go to Davos because you have clients, your suppliers, your regulators, head of state in the markets in which you operate, and so on and so forth. So maybe these people make important decisions when they're in Davos, but it's on the margin of the summit itself.
So it's kind of a big networking event.
Exactly. It's a big networking event, like Aspen, like Milken, so many that exist very successfully in the United States.
Okay. So getting back to your book. So when you're writing a novel, what do you think the most important thing is? Because I'm in the process of writing one myself about a guy who's in witness protection, and he comes to Florida and he takes over an HOA, a homeowners association. And from there, he takes over a bunch of them. And yeah, so when you're writing a book, what is the key thing that you focus in on? Is it characters? Is it plot line or dialogue? I'm just curious for my own purposes here.
Well, I think when you write a novel, you try to focus on everything that matters. The plot, of course, if it's a real effective story, and we all have an innate desire to understand what's behind everything. So who done it? So the plot is absolutely essential. Characters are, of course, critical, and it's a good story. We are storytellers. We like to hear stories. That's what we are, but essentially as human beings. Nobody ever made a decision based on a number. I think it's Kahneman who said that. It's very true.
Sure.
Even when you invest, you need a story.
Yeah, that's what I...
As Recon's this wonderful book about narrative economics. And we do need stories to exist, to understand what's going around. I'll show you a great book which I'm reading at the moment, which is from an American author. I don't know whether you know.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him. Sure.
This is very famous. That's a fantastic book. Great characters, great plot, and of course, everything could be true because he knows the organization inside out. So that's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, well, storytelling is definitely an art form. And I always tell people getting into podcasting, learn how to tell stories, because all we have in the end are our stories. And really the to me, like when I look at numbers on a balance sheet or income statement, it's just telling a story in numbers, really, but it's still a story.
But you need something behind the numbers. Well, you need a podcast, you need a book, you need a constitution, you need a story, basically.
Yeah.
And investors are very, very good at that.
Yeah. And that's what entertains humanity too, is stories. Everything's just stories, right?
It's cool.
So, and even if they're old stories, that they're told in a new way, they become new again, right?
Yeah, of course. And at the moment there is this craze about tech and tech investing. I mean, it's based on stories. We all believe that they are going to change everything. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it really is an art form. They don't really teach it in public education, and they teach creative writing, but creative writing isn't really. That's how you tell a story. It's not how it's the mechanics of the story. It's not really how you create the story, right?
No, it is not. But it's very hard to understand what compels people to buy into stories. And probably the book market, the publishing market is the most ruthless market of the world because you know immediately, well, with the financial markets as well, but you know immediately whether you wrote a good story or not, whether people buy into it or not.
Yeah, so tell us, have you had some stories that people just didn't buy into, bad stories, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I used to work in investment banking. I was an economist working on the trading floor. So you tell stories to your clients all the time. And of course, I had successes. I had also many failings, like everybody else. Books are different. Books are different because they are a labor of love. You spend a lot of time writing books, and books don't sell very much. In fact, the publishing market is pretty much like the venture capital market. The publishing houses spend a lot on many different books and hope that one will stand out, and that's how it works.
Well, there's one key to success in life I found, and I didn't know it till I was much older, was learn how to tell a story. Because people that can tell stories are really interesting. And I remember one time saw the late author George Plimpton, and we were at a gathering for Macallan Scotch. They're having these get-togethers all over the country. Sit down with a glass of scotch and some Scotch salmon, smoked salmon, and you tell stories and you have a good evening. And it was a great brand building exercise for Macallan. And George Plimpton, he was the great poser. He was a baseball player, struck out like every time he was at bat. He was a football player, got half killed when they tackled him. He went in the ring against Muhammad Ali, and he was one of the great raconteurs. And I'll never forget watching him and watching how he told the story, how he captivated people. And I was just in awe. I said, I don't think I could ever do that. Little knowing that at some point, maybe not as good a storyteller as him by any stretch, because he was one of the best, but able to communicate ideas through stories. And somehow his skills rubbed off on me a little bit, way greater intellect than myself, but he was a master at it. So
it's very impressive to meet such people who can narrate, who can tell stories in a way that compels everybody to listen. I admire that.
Yeah.
And this is a great place, by the way, to discover people who are really, really good at telling stories.
Yeah, and it takes work. It really takes work.
There's an abundance of talent. It takes a lot of work. And there's some people who are incredibly impressive.
Yeah, so I agree. So we find your book. We can find it at Amazon, obviously, because I'm looking at it right up there, and wherever fine books used to be sold.
No, only on Amazon, because I wanted it to be published at the time I finished to write it. So during the meeting in Davos. And as you know, if you publish a book, you'll have to wait at least 6, 8, 9 months. With Amazon, you do it overnight. It's an incredibly efficient model.
Yeah, really.
So I published it on Amazon. It's very short. It's a novella. It's 60 pages, 90 pages, because I think it's also very important to keep in mind that we live in a world in which we suffer from the economic of attention. People just...
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, we are inundated by this flow of information analysis. We don't know where to go. It's the same with books. So very few people have time to read a 600-page book. I don't know how long yours will be. In my case, I decided to make it short. Pages. You can read it 1 hour and a bit, 2 hours maybe.
Yeah, I want it to be an audiobook also. And, I love audiobooks because then the story, when you read a novel, you're creating the story in your mind. And when you're listening to an audiobook, the story's told to you. So it's a little bit different. But sometimes you could be reading a book that's boring or that I didn't find interesting. Like there was a biography of Alexander Hamilton, who is an incredible character in history. So much of the way the country is now is directly attributable to him. And the book was about 1,200 pages. That's neither here nor there. I can read multi-thousand page books, but it just wasn't really well written. And then when I bought the audiobook and I started it from where I left off, it was the most interesting book I had ever really encountered. It was amazing.
Interesting. Easier to digest.
Yeah, because the narrator made up for the author's deficiencies. And sometimes, he was a grade A narrator, way better than I could ever do. And I've done a few of them, but he was spot on. And I couldn't stop listening to it. Whereas it took me 6 months to read half the book. I was done with the book in like less than a week, listening nonstop. So, sometimes certain stories need to be told orally and others written, I guess.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate you coming on. We'll have a link in the show notes to this interview on Financial Survival Network, to the Amazon listing of your book. Do you have a website that we could also follow you on?
Well, I have my professional website, which is called mopiabarometer.com website. But it's about macro issues. It's not about the book.
That's okay.
No, I don't publicize myself very much. Not
right as well.
I do the minimum.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck on this book. I'm getting it as soon as hang up with you. I've got it right on Amazon, and I'm buying the book to help support you. And it sounds like a great plot, and I'll write a review.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to reading yours when it's out.
All right. I will send you a copy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.